Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. I've started messing around with some of the other stamp sets in the catalog now that you all have access to them. And this is part of a suite in the catalog that is called, it's so much fun to be able to open up the catalog now and show you what we're looking at. This is the Graceful Glass Suite, and it is absolutely gorgeous. There are panels of paper that are incredible. These are the two pieces basically that I'm working with today. This stained glass window looking panel, and then this pattern that's almost an Art Deco pattern. But the glass, and I've made a card that I'll show you here before we're done out of this as well, using some of the panels of this beautifully organized material here with different colors of flowers on each of the panels. And here's a sneak peek of the card I made with that one. I'll be doing a video on that later this week. But I thought I would start with this one, and this has a stamp set, and I will tell you that these, it's called Painted Glass, and the font on here is beautiful, almost a Baroque looking font, and it's just gorgeous. Then there's a little mandala here, a little circle, a rose, a bird, and a butterfly. And today I'm using the thank you and the butterfly. And on this card, it says, here, a reason to celebrate. And what I did is I trimmed that down so it just says celebrate. But it's just a lovely, lovely set. So there's the stamp set and then the dies. I'll show you the dies on this. So there's an opportunity to make, I saw somebody do the other day where they made a corner out of this little pie-shaped piece and then used this die down the side and then the corner again and across and over, and it made a frame on a card that was absolutely stunning. And here it cuts out the butterfly, the bird, and the rose that are in the stamp set here. And my guess is that this semicircle might cut this mandala out here. Let's just see. Well, this would be actually larger than the circle stamp here. And so it's just absolutely just a beautiful suite, and I fell in love with this one right out of the box. So let me show you here and tell you what we need to make this card. I'll move some of these things out of the way. And what we need to make this card is I used a Very Vanilla base. I tried white and I didn't like it nearly as well. 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. And let me give this card just a little burnish here. We want that to stay good and closed once we get going here. Then I used a panel that is 5 1/4 by 4. Then I cut out here, this is the paper, it's 6 by 6 paper, and what I did was I cut out this piece so that I picked up the line here closest to the window itself, and I cut that on my trimmer. I'll bring this up so you can see it, so that I caught the black edge all the way around on the outside of this panel. And now this panel fits perfectly on the card here. And no, that's not true. I did have to cut this top panel down just a little bit here, and I cut the bottom off a little bit, and I'll show you how I made up for that with the black edging. So that piece is going to have to get trimmed just a little bit to fit on our quarter panel here. You can see that's going to have to come off just a little smidge, 1/8 of an inch maybe on either side. Okay, so then I have these pieces, and I cut this piece diagonally because I thought this looked a little bit better going this way versus this way. And so I cut 2 pieces out of this that are, let's see, exactly 5/8 of an inch by 5 1/4. So 2 of those. Then I cut a piece out of this pattern paper, which is this paper, and I literally just cut one little of these squares off there. It looks like I need to trim that one just a little bit. And then I showed you the stamps that I'm using. And then I'm using alcohol markers to do the coloring. And when we get to that, I'm going to leave the coloring in so you can see it, but I'm going to speed it up a whole bunch so that it's not too tedious to watch. So the only other thing we need, that is 7/8 of an inch by 2 3/4 of an inch. And there it is. And that is to stamp our sentiment as on the card. And you certainly could put anything on there you want, but I love the sentiment with the kind of script that goes with the card. So let's just get started here. And I'm going to start with this, and I'll show you a little trick about how I glued this piece down, as you can't see any glue underneath, and the trick is to put glue all over, and then you can't see any of it. So I'll show you how I did that as well. So the very first thing I'm going to do is get out my trimmer here, because I'm not very good at freehand straight cutting, and I am going to just take a sliver off the top and a sliver off the bottom. There we go. And you can see here what I cut off. Like I said, maybe 1/8 of an inch on either side of that. Now I'm going to do my coloring on this panel, and I'm going to use my Stampin' Blends, and I'm going to work from the top to the bottom so that I don't end up working here and then having to come up here and having to put my hand in what I've already colored. So just from the standpoint of ease on this, I'm going to start at the top, have my color lifter handy in case I go outside the lanes, and I'm going to go ahead, and this one is Dark Night of Navy, and let's see, I'll be using this one, which is Daffodil Delight, and I will be using the Light Cherry Cobbler, and I'll be using, although it's now retired until I get my new ones, I'm going to use the dark pink Pirouette, and I'm going to use my light old olive and my dark rich razzleberry, and these are the ones that I'm going to use on the outside of the card. Here is Pineapple Punch, I think, dark Pineapple Punch, and I'm going to be using light and dark Bermuda Bay. And so those are the colors that I'll be using. So I'm going to set those to the side here and reach for them as I need them, just so you can know what it is I'm doing. And I'm going to start my coloring, and I will speed up the video. So there's my panel colored. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry for just a minute, and I'm going to show you how I adhered these panels onto my card panel here. So I have my two side pieces and my vellum, and it seems that the trick in applying vellum to a card base like this, it's very difficult because often you can see the ink, the glue underneath the panel as you lay it down on the vellum. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some Tombow, a nice great big glob of it here on my silicone mat. And I'm going to use my sponge, and what I'm going to do is apply my glue right to the panel itself in a very even manner, and then lay the vellum pieces down on it. It seems that the trick to not having the glue show is if you put glue everywhere, then you can't see any of it. So I'm going to grab some of this glue from my blob here, and I'm going to streak it across my paper here, and I'm going to take one of these strips of paper and I'm going to absolutely get it flush with this piece of paper here as I draw it up. Oh, this isn't the original piece I cut. That's okay. I'll trim it off at the top. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do is that same thing, continuing on my card here and getting my glue. Looks like I don't have enough because that panel is pretty good sized. There we go. Put a nice great big bunch of glue here. Again, I'm going to grab some here on my sponge, and I'm going to draw it across this whole panel here and get plenty of glue down on this paper. And then I'm going to set this paper right here and butt it up against that edge and the edge of the card, and carefully draw that up the card and put it into place. Now one last time with a bit of Tombow on this other edge here, and get some of that glue. This is very messy and very sticky, but to get that glue put down along that edge of the paper, and then to put my strip in place as quickly as I can here, butt it up against the second piece of paper and drawing it right to the edge of the bottom of the paper and laying it down across the whole piece. And I had cut more strips of this side panel, and I guess I picked up a couple that were longer. Anyway, now that that's down there, I'm going to just trim that flush here at the top of my page. And there, I'll bring this up so you can see. Now you can't see any of the glue any place, and the whole panel is stuck down to the card panel, the whole piece of vellum, all three pieces, stuck right down to the card base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my Wink of Stella now. Let's see if this is a, yes, this has got plenty on it. And what I'm going to do is put my Wink of Stella on my butterflies, including their bodies here. and then I just streaked some away from the center of the flowers. And then, because this bleeds, I'm now going to color the butterfly bodies, now that the glitter's already on there, in black. Because if I had put this marker on first, for sure it would have bled all over. So there we go. So that is my front panel completed. Now, I think I'm just going to give that a second to dry as I get the interior of this prepared. Now, I'm using my Memento ink on the inside. I have my little panel, and I'm just going to put some of this glue on the back of this piece and stick that down on the inside of my card a little bit over from center and get that glued down. There we go. And then we're going to do our stamping. And so, let's see. I have my Pierce mat here and my Memento ink. Okay, so I'm going to first put down the image, and I'm going to stamp once just to make sure here. And I'm going to put this butterfly in the corner at the bottom here. Good. And then for that, I am going to use a little bit of the regular markers to put down a little bit of color. Okay, now what I'm going to do is add a little of the Wink of Stella very carefully to the areas that I have not colored so that it won't bleed my ink. All right, and then a little bit more color on the inside of this glass panel. And because it's on the vellum, straight on the vellum, I don't have to worry about this bleeding through. So I can go ahead and use my alcohol markers. Okay, this card is a little fiddly, but the regular markers don't bleed through the back, and so this is now all ready to go. Let's see, I have one more bit of stamping to do, and that is to put my sentiment on here. And I've got my sentiment mounted here, and I'm going to use my Memento ink and put this image down right here in the center of this little panel. And there we've got a nice image. And I'm going to go around the edge of this with my black marker. Nothing to bleed here. And it just finishes that edge off a little bit. So I have my panel here, and I'm going to put this up on dimensionals. Put my thank you in place right here on my card. And there we have our card finished. So that is the project for the day. And here is the original. And because the coloring varies from one to the other, thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And let's see, the prize draw for this month is, let's see, it's a bundle. And let me see if I can show it to you. It's so much fun to be able to open the catalog and show you. And here we go. This is the bundle this time, called Sitting Pretty, and it includes all of these stamps here and then the die set. And you'll notice that in the catalog, this bench has a die that cuts it out, but there's an additional bench die here that cuts out this bench. And I've seen this done where people have cut out some of the slats in the middle and turned it into a chair, so they had two chairs on either side. I've seen them make it into a much smaller bench so it's not quite so wide. And I've seen people kind of take off the rest of it and turn it into a little fence. So very versatile. Then there's a stone path here that embosses your card, and this is a brick path here that stamps on your card. I think it's a lovely set, and I'll be doing, actually I think I'm going to be doing a pop-up with this one over the near term. And so this is the prize draw for the month of June, and all it takes is placing an order with me on my website, www.lbedinger.stampinup.net, and your name goes into the hat, and we take a look at the end of the month and draw a name to win that bundle. So again, thank you so much for stopping by. I do so appreciate it. And that's it for me today. So I'll be back soon with more cards and more projects. Bye.